very warmly welcome you all. Many of the colleagues were present yesterday also, and some colleagues have come today. So both are welcome. For the ones who have joined us today, I'll very briefly explain the context of this two-day consultation that we are having. This organization, I would say institution, is unique in character. That right in the beginning it had a very strong development orientation for the global south. So you can imagine that UNCTAD would have been providing critical support to the global south since 60s to have better policies in their own countries, to help them or prepare them to play a more active role in the global governance, particularly of international trade. So WTO, which is the UN body for international trade, is obviously always there, but for developing countries, my own experience with UNCTAD goes a long way back. Using the word progressive perhaps is a bit problematic these days, but I've always found them with compassion for the developing country causes. And there, for example, if you look at their annual trade and development report, which is their flagship report, which is extensively used by us in developing countries to know what is happening at the international trade and to understand the issues which are of major interest to the developing countries. And so in that context, UNCTAD a few years ago launched a program for better understanding of the transition in China, focusing on their debt management policies in particular, and then the modernization of the production and the role of IP. So I was associated with that process actually. The guest that I'm going to introduce to you, Dr. Stephanie Blankenberg, I met her in Jakarta in November 2019. I had actually written a paper on titled Whether CPAC is a Debt Trap. So I was associated with them, and when they conceived this project of green industrialization in 4 Belt and Road countries, they were kind to include Pakistan as one of the countries. Again, thank you very much for that. And other countries are Turkey, Malaysia, and Kazakhstan. So the way the whole program has been designed was explained yesterday also, that the project is trying to break new ground, which is sensitive to the context of each of these countries. There is a common cause also. We know that greening is the new medium of development. For me, if you say green industrial policy and if you say new industrial policy, let's say Pakistan, it means one and the same thing. And that's what we would reflect today also with all of you, that that's the macro level question which I would like to leave with all of you right from the beginning, that can be used interchangeably, which has been our hypothesis that Pakistan need to modernize and green its manufacturing as a single undertaking. So if we have to become competitive and green at the same time, this is what our industrial policy should be. So thanking again the entire team for having come here. I would like to share that under the project we have produced 12 studies. The first 5 studies were presented in a similar setting in October 2023. There we presented our studies on textiles, agriculture, transport, and a major paper on the binding constraints of green industrialization in Pakistan. And we did a paper on availing the opportunities from loss and damage fund. During those consultations and afterwards, we could see that we need to come down from the high level of macro abstract analysis, and we should build the green industrialization policy framework bottom up. So we studied 7 sectors, which are large sectors, but which also feed the domestic demand. So we have been doing fairly good, or better one would say, when it comes to the greening of export-oriented sectors due to the international pressures or compliances. But somehow we had this two-speed policy or practice, one would say, where the domestic sectors were not really touched very strongly as far as standards and compliances are concerned. So we have produced 7 studies on detergents, vegetable oil, wheat, dyeing and finishing, detergents, and plastics, and aluminium, and kitchen. So all these sectors yesterday were presented, detailed presentations. Many of you are here. Today also we would kind of present a summary of those papers again. But these are large sectors, and all of them have serious issues when it comes to greening and lean manufacturing and compliances. So we would try, with your help, to understand what is happening in these sectors and what needs to happen in these sectors. So the way we are going to organize this session is that I would, in the beginning, request Dr. Stephanie and Dr. Imdad to do a brief summing up of yesterday's discussions. And then I would, with pleasure, invite my colleague, senior officer on my left, who is Mr. Asif, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Industries and Production, being with us to chair the session. For us, this is a very strong statement of support from the Ministry of Industries for the cause that we are together to give the country a robust green industrialization policy framework. Yesterday we had the good luck to have the Minister, the National Coordinator to the Prime Minister for Climate Change with us, who inaugurated the consultation. Then we had Mr. Sajid Baloch, the Federal Secretary for Science and Technology, chairing one session, and the second session yesterday was chaired by Ms. Aisha Umaira Chaudhary, who is the Secretary of Climate Change. So that speaks of the significance of the topic and the importance being given by the current setup at the very senior level. And in this regard, when it is a matter of satisfaction that the government is very keen on that, we have invited Dr. Stephanie, a good number of academics, senior academics, into this session. This is a concluding meeting of the project also. It's good that UNCTAD provided us the guidance to carry out this project, but after this consultation, we would put in all the inputs, guidance in the draft Green Industrialization Policy Framework and integrated sectoral policy strategies and interventions. But from there, the government would take its own route to adopt and implement that, but it's the academia which needs to be very critical about what is being said. We are good in bringing out policies which are hardly or which are never implemented. There needs to be a kind of good understanding by the academia and a continuous pressure if the policy is good for its implementation and helping the government implement it better. So the way we are starting is that we would have the summing up, and then Mr. Asif would share his opening thoughts to launch the discussion, and then we have basically 3 presentations to help you participate in the discussion. Today is not the day of us making lengthy presentation, but still we would make minimum length presentation so that we put the key questions for the roundtable, policy roundtable participants to take the discussion forward. So with this, it's over to Steph.
you having joined us yesterday already, but also some new faces. But welcome very warmly everyone to this policy roundup. Now, all right, there you can look up who I am. Really, what I do is head a branch at UNCTAD that is concerned with economic cooperation integration among developing countries, what often is referred to as South-South cooperation. And this project is a very core part of our activities. Apart from the subject area of resilient developmental green transformation, it is very much focused on promoting South-South peer-to-peer learning. This is an exercise in South-South cooperation. Allow me one very brief remarks after on UNCTAD itself. UNCTAD is not a UN agency, it is a standing conference. So as opposed to many UN agencies, UNCTAD is owned by our member states. And the vast majority of those, of course, are developing countries. Just to make that important point quite clearly, and of course it was founded in '64 with the express purpose to promote the prospects for economic development in developing countries in the global economy. So while member states include advanced countries, its express purpose is support for development in the South, just to be very clear. So what we're doing and how we're doing it is governed by our member states directly. So my task here is now to sum up, and I'll be brief not to take away too much time from the important policy discussion that we're gearing up to, sum up core issues raised, core topics from yesterday, from the first day of the second national consultation. We were very lucky. I think it was a very productive, intense, but also a very productive day with very interesting discussions, and we were very lucky to have very high-level participation by the Honorable Amina Khurshid, National Coordinator to the Prime Minister, as well as the Federal Secretary Aisha Mera Chowdhury from the Climate Change and Environmental Coordination Ministry, and of course also of Sajid Balogh, Federal Secretary at the Ministry of Science and Technology. So this was a very productive setup in which there could be, and that's one of the general objectives and interests of this project, there could be exchange and discussion at the level of policy making between experts, between experiences at provincial and at federal level with relevant policymakers, and that was very greatly appreciated. Now, from the point of view of my summing up, we opened the first session by starting to look at one of the two core pillars of the green industrialization strategy, of the framework for that will be discussed further today. And that first pillar is lean manufacturing. So the emphasis was on, as Dr. Sohail has already said, the emphasis was on looking at domestic sectors that are very important in terms of their environmental impact, but that are often neglected in the discussions on green transformation in the bigger picture that does tend to often look at export-oriented sectors and at international rules and regulations on environmental impacts and policies. So there was this focus. Honorable Amina Khurshid did express, I think, very encouraging and very strong support for this kind of approach or a framework that integrates, that takes an integrated look at core sectors in the Pakistani economy at a fairly microeconomic level, but with important impact on potential for environmental improvements, and also support for focusing in a number of ways on local solutions to the problems arising. So to return to the first section, that was on lean manufacturing. So it was on the aspect of how can you reduce waste, in particular, how can recycling be promoted, and how can what is often referred to as a circular economy in this particular and specific meaning be promoted. And there were very detailed, very interesting contributions in the brevity of time on plastics as well as on kitchenware and vegetable oil. Now I have to say also that these contributions, as we receive the papers and prepare them for publication, will become publicly available on the UNCTAD web pages. And we will share, so you will have an opportunity to look up the detail, and it's not the place to go into the detail, but what we could see was, on the one hand, the enormous environmental impact on the ground in Pakistan, that negative, I should say, environmental impact that's produced in these three sectors, at the same time as also the opening for relatively straightforward and feasible, not prohibitively high-cost solutions to this. There was a lot of original thinking in regard to plastics, in regard to kitchenware, as well as quite closely related, of course, vegetable oil, of what could possibly be done locally with local solutions that aren't prohibitively expensive, so that immediately there would be discouragement. We broadened the discussion on these contributions to contributions from the provinces. We had a very interesting presentation by Simon Salim on the Green Transformation Policy Program in Punjab. We had a contribution very interesting to my mind as well on green housing possibilities and the realization that proper planning on future affordable housing would have enormously positive impacts on a number of environmental areas, from water management to a range of others. We also heard from the private sector and its concern in engaging with adaptation of green practices as well as green innovation. One of the issues that arose, one was already, I think, is very well recognized here. No one needs to tell you this, but is of course the difficulty of coordination between the federal level on the one hand and the various provinces. So we were very lucky, thanks also to the organization by Social Protection Resource Center and Safdar Sohail to have a proper presentation of both the federal views and concerns and the provincial views and concerns. Apart from that theme, another recurrent theme that certainly stuck in my mind was that there was a certain tension between a number of local solutions available, of local policy agenda, of local policy approaches, including supporting tools for industry to get involved in greening within their own industrial development, on the one hand, and implementation and compliance on the other. So there is a range of possibilities, but there remained a question of why compliance with either certain regulations or else results from supportive, for example, lending policies, was generally considered relatively low and problematic. So that was a question, and I think remains, that we have to take on board, and that is, I think, relevant to understanding why, when there can be low-cost solutions in these important sectors, it's nevertheless not that easy to proceed. The second section looked at a sort of closely related aspect, putting the emphasis more on clean manufacturing, again from this say microeconomic perspective of looking at the actual manufacturing processes and looking at the factory level, at the shop floor level, seeing what is happening there, but to see what, how could there be a sustained impact on, say, for example, CO2 or greenhouse gas emissions. And we had a very interesting presentation by Asif Khan from the SPRC and Lahore University, also on three sectors, micro-sectors, if you like, or sub-sectors that were dying, so that related to the textile sector that have been looked at in a more general perspective. First national consultation, now narrowing down, zooming in, if you like, or zeroing in on the dyeing finishing aspect of it, looked at detergents and at meat. And we got a sort of, certainly from the UNCTAD perspective, I got quite an insight into, again, it's not really a contradiction, but the fact on the one hand that there are really quite detrimental, quite large negative environmental impacts arising from these sectors, and on the other hand, quite innovative, local, affordable solutions potentially available, but requiring at the same time different solutions to different problems. So also not a one for all across sector solution. We looked at dyeing finishing without going too deep, but it was clear that a lot of ways there was in terms of the type of alcohol, I've forgotten what it's called, used, that can be introduced into a circular or markets can be created to sell it off and create revenue rather than to just dump it, essentially. It was just a small aspect of it to give a concrete example, but quite a number of suggestions how the detrimental environmental impacts could be reduced quite feasibly through implementable, concrete, domestic, local solutions to this. Detergents, again, it was quite impressive, actually, quite how bad they are for everybody, but also how the market had exploded for detergents. And clear again here that there is an issue of consumer behavior, there's an issue of a large part of this being run by the informal economy. So a number of different issues that require a flexible policy approach to capture all these impacts and turn it around. Against along lines which were suggested in a concrete manner that would seem very feasible and affordable. And for wheat, very close to my interests, like political economy, social approach to understanding why taking up breeding practices is currently simply economically unattractive or even not feasible for wheat farmers in Pakistan, and what would be required to change that in terms of the distribution of income in the sector across the various participants through the chain of production in different ways. So there's more of a political economy angle to it. That will never be easy to tackle, but that, again, took on a very concrete form and shape in terms of what could be addressed, what policymakers could begin on to address this. The discussion on this, there was a second contribution that looked in terms of support for local solutions and both economics as well as positive environmental dynamics arising from this, looked at the bottleneck, if you like, in higher education, technical education in particular, and the mismatch between what training is achieved in terms of national education programs for the kind of technical expertise and knowledge that is required to actually implement relevant and implement those solutions in Pakistan in terms of technology studies. So this was also very interesting, and I think it was also strongly taken on board in this case by the Federal Secretary, actually, Madam, who was present at this, to note that there needs to be articulation between the various aspects of promoting these kinds of solutions. So I think overall, these were the two big sections, very rich, very interesting in my view and perception. And they also pointed quite clearly, and I think there will be quite a smooth transition to what we will be discussing today, namely the sort of additional pillars, apart from lean and clean, the additional pillars that will be required to make the kind of, broadly speaking, affordable, implementable and can actually work, namely compliance, a close look at competition policies for domestic sectors, where sort of international competitive pressure is not by definition present. Whether or not international competitive pressure is a discussion, and so no one misunderstands me, but it's, as a matter of fact, this doesn't apply as far as environmental standards are concerned and policies are concerned to the domestic sectors. So this question of what support is required, and also what stick has to be added to the carrot for implementation, and how can this be done credibly, as well as the question of addressable findings. So that we'll return back to later. So as I said, I think it was for us it would be very rich discussion, also very inspiring in the sense that the project's objective, of course, is to support, to help initiate, to help push further concrete applied national policy strategies. So to work within the national context and not come with the idea of, as I said, one-size-fits-all approach that is promoted by an international organization. That's not what we want, and so this has been a very happy and productive encounter and discussion so far. So with that, I'll pass on to Asif Saeed, who spoke to us yesterday on kitchenware and vegetable oil. This is impressions from yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is really a detailed thing. Yeah, thank you so much, Stephanie, for this long and detailed summary of what happened yesterday. There were many things which were said explicitly by the presenters. There were some things which were said implicitly in the presentations, and I tried to grasp what was said between the lines, and then I talked to the presenters after the sessions. If we summarize the whole discussion and discourse which took place yesterday, it was this: that we seriously need to reimagine, and this is also a word I picked from a presentation yesterday in the first session. We need to reimagine everything related to what we are doing to green Pakistan. And there are four things which I extracted from the presentations, and then I talked to the presenters. The first step which came out of presentations was a suggestion, if I try to redefine, define what was meant by reimagining green in Pakistan. It was to localize in nationalistic terms, and to simplify the language of the policies, steps involved in implementing policies, because there were so many things which were identified in my conversations with the presenters, which are very complicated, and those things which are complicated in policies and laws, they are also a barrier to work on. And then the third point, which is very important, which came out of the yesterday presentation, that we seriously need to take up the task of innovating things for local context, local meaning in nationalistic context. And then the last thing which I noted from the presentations and my conversations, it is to create things creatively. And there are four things, and I think this is an agenda for us at the Social Protection Resource Center, which I think Dr. Safdar and I and our team will be working on this metaphor of reimagining green in Pakistan. By the way, there was this serious theme which came out again and again, that what green should mean or could mean in Pakistani context, in nationalistic context. Because of course, implicitly this theme was highlighted in presentation, but explicitly it was expressed in our conversations that we don't need to follow whatever is coming from the Western countries. We need to set our terms of what green should mean in Pakistani context. And the first point, which I think highlighted by almost all of the government officers, especially young officers I talked to, is that our government, provincial and federal government, and the agencies working for federal and provincial governments, they also need to reimagine themselves. Because the hierarchies are so rigid that young officers don't find any opportunity to raise concerns, to talk openly, to take a different view than their superiors. And I think this is very, very important topic, that these hierarchies can never be violated. And this needs to change. Government needs to bring everyone, especially the young officers who are much more recent than the senior officers. So this is the first point. Number two, which was highlighted again and again, it was, if we want to do something meaningful in Pakistan, we must change our education. Our education, not only the engineering education, but all of the education, so is far removed from the demands and requirements of our times. We had, after the lunch and before lunch, long conversations on this. Our education is so unhelpful that yesterday there were industrialists and they gave me real examples that how, for example, even the individuals or graduates with engineering degrees or with the technical degrees were so unable to think and imagine things creatively and solve problems. Number three, that we need to reimagine industry, academia and business relationships. And especially academia and universities have to lead this reimagining of relationship, because government has its own constraints. If universities come forward and they actively go after manufacturers and industrialists and try to know what do they need, what kind of graduates they need in their industries, what kind of graduates, what kind of thinking, what kind of skills they need. And universities must focus only on those what our industry and markets need. So this point is also something to, and I think Dr. Amjad's presentation is a very good starting point. We need to make a list of what kinds of problem-solving skills. For example, some countries follow trees. That there are other ways of doing industrial problem-solving, or say there are many schools like Stanford teaching design thinking to solve industrial problems, but we'll be taking this up into. And then last point, which I think was stressed by everyone, is government and industrial relationship. Government and manufacturers, government and industry relationship needs to be completely reimagined. Because the traditional or conventional channels of communication between the two, government and the industry, are no more helpful, are no more working. So both of the actors in the government and in industry and business need to find new ways to talk to each other, because the older ways of talking to each other are no more working. So this is from me. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Imran. Your contribution to our project right from the beginning has been so good, well, creative, nice, positive. So I thank you for standing up. and bringing up all these issues. Now we, once we are through with yesterday's summing up and start formally the policy roundtable, and before I request the chair to give his opening remarks, it should be useful to have a very quick round of knowing who is who, very briefly. Your good names, the organization that you're coming from, and your main work or interest in the subject matter that we have. We can give 1 minute to each participant, because that is extremely important for us also to design the rest of the session. So I start from my right.
I am Dr. Sunil.
The other Dr. Sunil is also.
So you cannot rely on him only, you can vouch on me also. So I am representing Green Pakistan Initiative. You must have heard about that initiative. Basically, its aim is to, transform the barren, uncultivated, underutilized land into the arable or cultivable land. And its strategy is very simple, that we get the land from the government on lease, and then we sublet it to the international foreign investors as well as domestic investors. The waste management practices, the renewable energy practices, all these sustainable practices which we can think of, we encourage the investors to use that. So it is going very well, and we are not only focusing on agriculture, also on the livestock also. And we are trying to earn some sort of carbon credits on that also, by getting it to follow the clause of Article 6.2 or 6.4 of the Paris Agreement. We are in touch with the Ministry of Climate Change on this subject, that the recent policies which they have devised on carbon credit in 2024, we are following that and trying to get this project registered for the carbon credit also. So I think time is the constraint. So far so good. Thank you.
Well, that is excellent, and I think this is an example possibly that wants to launch a very large, brand new project. This is the design of the whole project to have all these considerations that you have shared with us. There is a slight change in the program, in the sense that we know that senior officers of the ministries are called for meetings suddenly, and they have to be there. I thank Asif for being here, but he has to leave, so I would invite him for his remarks. And then we continue with the introduction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I hope this is working. Everybody is audible. Thank you, sir. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, I thank my teacher, my mentor, Dr. Sadar Saeed. I had the opportunity to be a student in the Civil Service Academy, and that thing has never stopped till my last 28 years of service. I'm learning from him a lot of things. And I thank Dr. Stephanie to be a part of this whole initiative, supporting a country which needs help in this specific area. I have worked with UNCTAD, not directly working under UNCTAD, but I had cross-cutting issues when I was working with the World Bank in Afghanistan. Mr. Ian Hoffman was with there also. So I have seen the very good work that UNCTAD has done, and it is one of the organizations which I must say who has done real work which is needed by the developing countries. The work which adds value to the economy, which adds value to the lives of the people in those countries. So it is not one of those organizations who are just there to give technical assistance, which is not even required by the audience. That is a very important thing, a very important subject we must all realize as countries, as people, we have to be very active that what kind of support we are asking from the international agencies, from the non-governmental organizations, from the development partners, which are required in this country. The technical assistance that is not required and which does not translate into concrete projects is of no use to this country and to other countries as well. And as development partners, as academicians, as technical experts, we must realize this. I mean, we must stop those initiatives which are counterproductive to the country's interests. My friend Dr. Saab has identified policies and issues, so I'll just highlight that things have changed. Things have changed in the private sector, things have changed in the government sector. There are people who still have a mindset which is not reimagined, but I can assure you some of my colleagues are here. They know my team, my secretariat, and some other secretaries I know. They are working with a very open door policy now. And they are very open to discussions. They not only discuss it openly with their young officers, they also discuss it with academia. They get the help of experts. Right, sitting on my right, my teacher is there. Last week we had an issue of recycling, and we had to, talk to the International Monetary Fund for some support in that industry. And we got help from Dr. Saab, and he was very kind enough in a short notice. He gave us a very good feedback and input. Because we did not have that much time in the ministries to do that kind of research. So we just extend help and had some value-added things that we can get from researchers. Engineering Development Board experts are sitting here. They have made some collaboration with NUS and JIK, and they are acting as a bridging gap between the academia as well as the industry. And they will let you know, they will share their thoughts, what they have seen, what NUS is doing or what some other institutes are doing, how much value addition they are doing it. So the cross-cutting things and the synergies are developing, slow but they are developing. And there are people who are focusing on it. We have a sectoral plan of our organization which is called Engineering Development Board. We are reimagining the whole organization. The whole organization is being reimagined. We are no more regulators. A slight regulation that we were doing in the automotive sector, even that is going away, and we have asked the Federal Board of Revenue to take care of that, because we have to make national policies. We have to give that, that platform for the industry, for the academia, for the different government organizations, for the development partners to steer some value addition to these industry sector of the Pakistan. Green industry is something very close to our heart. You can imagine we spent around 5 to 6 months developing a new electric vehicle policy. That policy is just finalized. We have very small issues because we are in the extended fund facility. So there are some fiscal taxation issues involved, otherwise the policy is finalized. What we did was, we had a development partner, we had experts, we had help from Dr. Saab, we had help from the advisors, we had help from Lahore University of Management Sciences, the national energy sector. We consulted at least 60 sessions we did with the industry, 60 sessions we did. We consulted the different think tanks that we have. Around 12 universities, we got their comments on the policy, and we not only got comments, we had sessions with them, so that we can get the feedback of the young, the experienced, the old, everybody. So that policy, the Dr. Saab has a draft, and they will share it with you, and you can also have a look. Even this finalized draft, we can add some more value to it. So government is now changing. Our work is changing from regulation to SPRC. And while this EV policy was made, 40% of the carbon emissions are from the transport sector. So we are shifting, we are trying to shift our industry, the automobile industry, especially the 2-3 wheelers in the start, and then the 4 wheelers, and then the buses and the heavy industry, to green industry, to electric vehicles. And you will see the transformation coming up very soon. The Prime Minister has a very strong commitment for that. He has initiated a financing scheme which will be launched most probably in a few weeks, which will be offering bikes, the electric bikes to people, so that they can come and shift to leave the internal combustion engine bikes. And bikes are, by the way, in the major cities, they are the major polluters. The major polluters. So industry, we have I think that this is something, because we have NDCs and we have to follow those, and we have commitments, international commitments, and for our own sake, we have to shift towards green industry and green transformation. This is an essentiality. It is not something that we can avoid. We cannot avoid that. So international commitments, our own environment, and the need of the future is that we shift to green industry. A lot of good work is being done. Some development partners are working with the Tanneries Association. Some are working with the cement industries. You must be knowing that. But it needs a very strong integrated policy. And we at the Ministry of Industry, we will try, because you know the industries is now a subject which is led primarily by the provinces. So while we are making the policy for EV, electric vehicles, we were also keeping them in loop all the time. Because just the federal territories of Islamabad, or for some matter the GD and AJK and other areas, it's not enough. The provinces need to be synergized. They should also have their own schemes and policies in place. Their environmental protection agencies, their private sector chambers should be there to help us. We will be, acting as a platform to guide them, to help them, to create synergies. But this needs a very holistic, the whole ecosystem needs to be developed. And one example I gave, the recycling industry, it's a problem which is already on our faces. The EU conventions, the Industrial Convention, the EU regulations are hitting our recycling industry. And the clusters in Gujranwala, in Sialkot, in Lahore, in Karachi, and in Peshawar, they are directly hit by it. It's an informal sector. But we have to formalize them. We have to guide them. We have to provide them facilities where they can do that recycling and open up that scrap, ferrous and non-ferrous scrap. So if we are hit, the economy, the people will be hit. We have a socio-economic issue if we do not handle the recycling industry in Pakistan, which is a topic which I think UNCTAD and SPRC will also help us in future. The Ministry of Environment and we are making some efforts to save those industries, because some EU regulations are going to hit us by 1st of March 2025. So these are living problems, these are things we have to handle in emergency, but with a holistic approach, with an approach that we all work together. But my request would be, especially to my academia and my students and my people here at TAD, that we should always focus on things which are needed by us. The things that are forced on us, they are not relevant. We will be dishonest to our own selves, to our own country, if we are focusing on things and subjects and issues which are not relevant to us. These 6-7 studies are relevant to us. We look forward for more such studies, which are implementable, which will not be just kept in the offices and drawers, and they will never be opened, and they will never be implemented. So we need implementable things to come up, and I'll need the support of all of you for this cause. And we are open to it. The policy will be shared with you. Some more actions that we plan to do, sectoral plans of GDP and the industry, we'll share with that. We are open to your comments and your suggestions for that. And my doors are open. I deal with some of the people are here. So we welcome all your comments. And again, I thank SPRC and UNCTAD for their support, for a value-added support that they give to this country. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Well, Asif, thank you very much. Thank you very much also for the kind words for me. I think we need such young officers to lead the next generation, I would say, changes. His candid analysis is very reassuring, I would say, and inspiring for us all to use relevant work. I think relevance, what we need, we should produce what we need, not produce for the sake of production. Yesterday, in terms of wheat, we saw that we should not produce wheat for profit, because it's a public good, it's a staple food. So the advisory is knowledge that we produce, that should not be produced for profit. That should be produced for a very much for being with us, and I wish you had continued with us, but
again, sir.
so
my apologies, sir.
I have a few more.
Thank you very much. I'll join again.
Okay, we continue with a quick round of introductions.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm Imran, Program Director for Punjab Affordable Housing Program. Just to connecting with what have been hearing since yesterday. So we want to construct some 40,000 affordable housing units by June 2027, and we got a money of $250 million. So how, just trying to be specific that the thing which have been shared in presentation, how such a great opportunity can connect and bring green construction, lean construction. So for example, once we discuss the plastic and PVCs, so there is a market for wood PVC also. So we can replace the flooring, the doors, the paneling, and can be more sustainable by choosing that kind of material in housing construction. Once we talked about kitchenware and need for clean energy, so we really want to experiment for a geothermal networking, solar, and new industry for ceramics. So this is how it can really help us out. Once we discuss the detergents and oil and its impact on keeping the sewage system unclogged. So there is a huge industry available with us, and how we can conserve the water, how we can solve that through a better planning techniques for reusing, coming up with specific water taps, toilets, which are actually looking for a less consumption. So right from the construction material choice of that to a housing crisis, I think it's a great opportunity. So we are looking forward to be partner with in this effort. So we can thank you.
I am also an advisor and engineering board for all knowledge and SPRC. We are engineering board is a regular part of Ministry of Industry and basically we work at the industry and the town, and we are very unconventional, like said, the government have to change its ways of working in the industry, and believe me, we are very we take input from industry so different that might be very surprising. We mainly machines are every issue that come up. We take their advice, we take their suggestions, and we pass on those suggestions to the government and come up with further solutions for industry. And we are also working on industry academia, like the colleague of the Center over there.
Thank you very much for providing us the opportunity. I'm Asif Advisor, Engineering Development from Ministry of Industry Production. As already said by Mr. Asif, the Secretary, I will briefly highlight the initiative that we have taken over the last 1 year. As Dr. Lal said that industry academia link is very important. So we have started an initiative of collaboration under triple helix model at first. With the top 5 universities of Pakistan, including NAS, GIK, NAMS, PIAS, and UNCTAD as well. Under that, academia and industry linkages, we have held a seminar, first of its kind, and invited more than 150 participants from academia as well as from the industry, the top-notch industries of Pakistan. The purpose of that seminar was the localization, as Dr. said, and validation that we could do with our local industry regarding green energies, green initiatives, and green manufacturing as well, including green manufacturing. And also the purpose was to remodify the syllabus and redesign the reimagining the content that our students require for our industry. It is very valuable input, and after that we also got some few inputs from industry, how to change the syllabus, what content should be there, what sort of input they require from academia to add value. So that is also first time, and under that we have planned in 2025 to have 100 patent filings, targeting 100 patent filings in 2025, leading to enhancing to 300 patent filings in the next year from academia to the industry. So that will not only improve the localization but also put some issues that import will and import of the products. So this exercise is being continuous, and we are dealing with other industries and other industries as well. Regarding the other initiatives that we have already taken other sectoral development plans, which basically includes the technology adoption, the technology that is required for green manufacturing, and then the standards and specifications. Because you know, one of the regulations regarding automobile and P29 regulations, there are 168 regulations so far established in the world by UNCTAD, but we have so far adopted only 17 out of them. We think that it is not required for us to adopt all 168, but what we require measures for the safety, for the operations, and for those which contribute less emissions to the air. So these are around 40 to 45 regulations mandatory. So we are only targeting those sectors and those areas which are essential at quality requirements, not all. And then we are also working on capacity building not only in the government but also for the industry as well. You know it better that for example a surgical industry that is producing around $500 million export a year on annual basis, but the production in that industry is very of the low grade. You know, a lot of carbon waste is there, a lot of localized manufacturing and manufacturing is there. So we have targeted around 13 sectors, particularly surgical and other ones, base metal, iron, steel, so on, to upgrade that manufacturing techniques to more affordable, more efficient, more productive, so that we can not only reduce our energy but also be compatible along the globe, reducing our cost as well. And then we are targeting some export sectors also to develop our trade position in that case. So these are some of the few initiatives that we are taking right now, particularly regarding the waste and recycling management. We have worked on it, and yesterday we had a lengthy discussion with IMF Fund regarding the waste and recycling project. So we are hopeful that we will be able to convince them to get some RNs on it. So this is very brief what we are doing, and in the last, yes, the thinking pattern is changing, reimagination style is changing. So the collaboration between industry, academia, and the government is very mandatory. That is being on board.
That's excellent. It's such an organization of national importance, and thank you very much for sharing the basic details. EDB has to be the leader in this transition. I hope we can recycle the governance also, lots of quickly your comment that we move on.
This is Dr. Indar Hussain. I'm at simultaneously at SPRC and University of Lahore. We are doing these very small experiments with local materials in kitchen in cooking, clay pots, cooking techniques, solar cooking gas, and many other small experiments with local materials, local ideas, our traditional knowledge, green knowledge. Thank you.
Maybe I shared Dr. Indar books and the bamboo sticks. I don't know how does it I mean, that is something most healthy, I guess. Jeez.
Thanks. Sir, my name is Brigadier retired Sher Shah. I am heading fertilizer manufacturers of Pakistan Advisory Council. We call it FMBAC. And this is a forum where the major manufacturers of fertilizers, that is Kochi, Agro and Fafu, these are the three major manufacturers, and we have sector. And for that matter, the companies, they have their farm advisory centers deployed all over Pakistan, where they carry out soil analysis and advise the farmers what kind of fertilizer they are supposed to use. And on the R&D side, also the fertilizer industry is committed really to come up with innovations, and in that zinc-coated fertilizers is the recent entry into the market, because in Pakistan there is a deficiency of zinc, and you must have seen that zinc being added to the wheat while being granulated. So that's a latest product, and we are also working on the slow release fertilizers also as well.